Rebecca felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. The opportunity was everything she had worked toward, but it also represented a major leap in responsibility and visibility. General Williams continued, "The promotion and assignment aren't final yet, but I wanted you to know that you're being seriously considered. Your current work will be a significant factor in the decision." Rebecca thanked the general for the information and the opportunity. As General Williams prepared to leave, she offered one final piece of advice. "Remember, the best leaders are those who can turn adversity into strength. Your experiences with Colonel Harrison have made you a better officer and a stronger leader. Use those lessons to help others who might face similar challenges." After the general's departure, Rebecca reflected on the conversation. The possibility of promotion to full colonel was exciting, but she also felt a sense of responsibility to use her position to improve conditions for other soldiers who might face discrimination or harassment. Meanwhile, Harrison's behavior continued to deteriorate. He became increasingly withdrawn and irritable, often contradicting his own previous instructions and creating confusion among his staff. Rebecca documented these incidents objectively, understanding that they might be relevant to the ongoing investigation. The breakthrough came during a routine staff meeting when Harrison openly questioned Rebecca's authority in front of his subordinates. He suggested that the integration requirements were unnecessary and implied that Rebecca was overstepping her bounds by implementing them. "Colonel Harrison," Rebecca said firmly, "I need to remind you that these integration requirements come directly from Pentagon leadership. My role is to ensure compliance with these directives, not to debate their merits. If you have concerns about specific requirements, I'm happy to discuss them privately." Harrison's response was shocking in its unprofessionalism. "Maybe if you had more actual field experience instead of riding a desk at the Pentagon, you'd understand the realities of base operations." The room fell silent as everyone processed what had just occurred. Harrison had essentially accused Rebecca of being incompetent and inexperienced, a serious breach of military protocol and professional courtesy. Rebecca maintained her composure, though inside she felt a familiar anger rising. "Colonel Harrison, I'm going to overlook that comment and attribute it to the stress of the integration process. However, I need to make it clear that such remarks are inappropriate and unprofessional. I suggest we table this discussion and reconvene when everyone has had a chance to review the requirements more thoroughly." As the meeting ended, Rebecca noticed the supportive looks from Harrison's subordinates. They had witnessed his unprofessional behavior and clearly disapproved of his treatment of their superior officer. The incident had actually strengthened Rebecca's position while further undermining Harrison's credibility. That evening, Rebecca received a call from Pentagon leadership. The investigation into Harrison's conduct had concluded, and the findings were damning. He would be relieved of command within the week and reassigned to a non-leadership position, pending retirement proceedings. More significantly, Rebecca's promotion to full colonel had been approved. She would assume command of the Strategic Operations Center immediately after completing the integration project. The promotion represented a culmination of years of hard work and perseverance, but it also meant that she would be leaving Harrison's base as his superior officer. The irony was not lost on Rebecca. The man who had once told her she would never amount to anything in the military was now watching her achieve one of the highest ranks in the service, while his own career crumbled around him. The next morning, Rebecca was informed that she would be conducting the notification meeting with Harrison about his reassignment. It was a standard procedure, but the personal significance of the moment was profound. She would be the one to officially inform him that his command was being terminated due to his conduct and performance issues. Rebecca prepared for the meeting with her characteristic thoroughness, reviewing all the documentation and ensuring she understood the proper procedures. She approached the task with complete professionalism, recognizing that this was not a moment for personal satisfaction, but rather an official duty that required dignity and respect for the process. When Harrison entered the conference room, his face was pale and his movements seemed stiff. He clearly suspected what was coming, though he might not have realized the full extent of the consequences he would face. Rebecca gestured for him to sit, then took her place across from him at the conference table. "Colonel Harrison," she began formally, "I'm here to inform you of decisions made by Pentagon leadership regarding your command status and future assignments." She handed him the official documentation, watching as he read through the papers with growing dismay. The documents outlined the investigation's findings, including multiple instances of discriminatory behavior, harassment of subordinates, and failure to maintain professional standards. Harrison's relief from command was effective immediately, and he would be reassigned to a staff position with no leadership responsibilities. Harrison's hands shook slightly as he finished reading. When he looked up at Rebecca, his eyes showed a mixture of anger, humiliation, and defeat. "This is because of you," he said quietly, his voice barely controlled. "You've been planning this revenge for years." Rebecca met his gaze steadily. "Colonel Harrison, this action is based on your conduct and performance over many years, as documented by multiple sources. My role in this process has been limited to providing factual information when requested by the investigating authorities." "You documented everything," Harrison continued, his voice growing stronger with anger. "You were building a case against me from the beginning." I documented incidents of unprofessional behavior because that's what any responsible officer should do," Rebecca replied calmly. "The investigation looked at patterns of conduct, not isolated incidents. Your treatment of me was part of a larger pattern that affected multiple soldiers under your command." Harrison stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, Rebecca thought he might try to intimidate her physically, as he had done years earlier. Instead, he seemed to deflate, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. "You have no idea what it's like," he said, his voice now showing vulnerability for the first time. "To watch to see your career end this way." Rebecca stood as well, maintaining her professional demeanor. "Colonel Harrison, I understand that this is difficult. However, the consequences you're facing are the result of choices you made over many years. Every soldier deserves to be treated with respect and given fair opportunities to succeed." Harrison nodded slowly, seeming to accept the finality of the situation. "What happens now?" "You'll be reassigned to a staff position at Fort Meade within 30 days. The details are in your packet. You'll have access to counseling services and career transition support if you choose to use them." As Harrison prepared to leave, he turned back to Rebecca one final time. "I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far. I thought I was maintaining standards, but I realize now that I was wrong about many things." Rebecca nodded, recognizing that this was likely the closest thing to an apology she would ever receive from him. "Colonel Harrison, I hope you're able to use this experience to grow and become a better leader in whatever role you take on next." After Harrison left, Rebecca sat alone in the conference room, processing the significance of what had just occurred. The man who had made her early military career a nightmare was now facing the consequences of his actions. However, she felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a sense of justice finally being served. The news of Harrison's reassignment spread quickly through the base. While some soldiers expressed surprise, most seemed to understand that the change was necessary and overdue. Rebecca noticed an immediate improvement in morale as word spread that she would be taking temporary command until a permanent replacement could be assigned. During her final week at the base, Rebecca focused on completing the integration project and ensuring a smooth transition. She worked closely with Harrison's former staff, many of whom expressed relief at the change in leadership. The base's performance improved dramatically once the toxic atmosphere Harrison had created was removed. Rebecca's promotion ceremony was held at the Pentagon, with General Williams officiating. As she received her new insignia and took the oath for her new rank, Rebecca thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The young lieutenant who had endured Harrison's harassment had grown into a confident, capable colonel ready to take on significant leadership responsibilities. The Strategic Operations Center Command was everything Rebecca had hoped for and more. She oversaw operations across multiple bases, coordinated with Allied forces, and contributed to strategic planning at the highest levels. Her reputation as an innovative and effective leader continued to grow, earning her recognition throughout the military hierarchy. 6 months into her new command, Rebecca received an unexpected message. Harrison had requested a meeting, citing his desire to make amends for his past behavior. Rebecca agreed to meet with him, curious about what he might have to say after all this time. They met at a neutral location, a coffee shop near the Pentagon. Harrison looked older and more subdued than Rebecca remembered. The arrogance and aggression that had once defined his presence were gone, replaced by a quiet humility that seemed genuine. "Colonel Martinez," Harrison began, "I want to thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I needed to speak with you in person." Rebecca nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I've spent the last several months in counseling, trying to understand why I behaved the way I did. I've come to realize that my treatment of you and others was inexcusable. I was dealing with my own insecurities and fears, but that's no excuse for the harm I caused." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "I want to apologize for everything I put you through. You were an exceptional soldier from the beginning, and I should have recognized and supported your potential instead of trying to tear you down." Rebecca listened carefully, evaluating the sincerity of his words. "I appreciate your apology, Colonel Harrison. I hope you're able to find peace with your past and build a better future." "I'm retiring from the military," Harrison continued. "I realize that my time in uniform should end, and I'm looking into civilian opportunities where I can try to make amends for my mistakes. I wanted you to know that your success hasn't gone unnoticed, and I'm genuinely proud of what you've accomplished." The meeting concluded with a handshake, a simple gesture that seemed to close a difficult chapter in both their lives. Rebecca left feeling a sense of closure and satisfaction, not because of Harrison's downfall, but because justice had ultimately prevailed. As Rebecca continued to excel in her new role, she made it a priority to mentor young officers who might face similar challenges. She established programs to support diversity and inclusion, created channels for reporting discrimination, and worked to ensure that no soldier would have to endure what she had experienced. Her story became an inspiration within the military, demonstrating that perseverance, professionalism, and dedication could overcome even the most difficult circumstances. Rebecca had not only survived Harrison's attempts to destroy her career, but had used those experiences to become a better leader and advocate for others. The transformation from the young lieutenant who had been bullied and harassed to the respected colonel who commanded strategic operations was complete. Rebecca had proven that success was indeed the best revenge, and that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating others, but from refusing to be defeated by them. Years later, as Rebecca continued to rise through the ranks toward general officer status, she would often reflect on the lessons learned from her early experiences. Harrison's harassment had been intended to break her spirit and end her career, but instead it had forged her into a stronger, more resilient leader. The military had changed significantly during Rebecca's career, becoming more inclusive and supportive of diversity. While challenges remained, the kind of systematic harassment she had endured was becoming increasingly rare and unacceptable. Rebecca took pride in knowing that her experiences and advocacy had contributed to creating a better environment for future generations of soldiers. In the end, Rebecca's story was not just about overcoming adversity or achieving personal success. It was about the power of perseverance, the importance of standing up for what is right, and the satisfaction that comes from using one's position to help others. The colonel who had once bullied her had never expected her to become his superior, but Rebecca had proven that talent, determination, and integrity would ultimately triumph over prejudice and abuse of power. The young woman who had once stood at attention while being berated by Colonel Harrison had become Colonel Martinez, a leader respected throughout the military for her competence, fairness, and dedication to service. It was a transformation that demonstrated the best of what the military could be when it lived up to its highest ideals and values. Lieutenant Rebecca Martinez had always been smaller than her peers, standing barely 5 feet 2 inches in her combat boots. At 22, she possessed a fierce determination that her commanding officer, Colonel James Harrison, seemed intent on crushing at every opportunity. Harrison was a towering man in his late 40s, with graying temples and a reputation for being particularly harsh on female soldiers. He had made it clear from day one that he believed women had no place in the military beyond administrative roles. Rebecca had joined the Army straight out of college, driven by a desire to serve her country and prove that size didn't determine capability. She excelled in her training, consistently scoring among the top of her class in both physical and tactical assessments. However, Colonel Harrison seemed determined to overlook her achievements and focus solely on her perceived weaknesses. During her first deployment under Harrison's command, the harassment began almost immediately. He would assign her the most menial tasks while her male counterparts received meaningful responsibilities. During briefings, he would interrupt her reports with dismissive comments about her voice being too soft or her presence being a distraction to the real soldiers. When she volunteered for challenging assignments, he would laugh and suggests she focus on paperwork instead. The worst incident occurred during a training exercise in the desert. Rebecca had been assigned to lead a small reconnaissance team, a role she had trained extensively for. As her team prepared to move out, Harrison appeared and publicly berated her in front of her subordinates. He questioned her ability to carry her own weight, literally and figuratively, and suggested that her teammates would end up carrying her gear before the mission was over. "Martinez, you're going to get these men killed with your incompetence," he bellowed, his voice carrying across the staging area. "Maybe you should consider a career change to something more suitable for your limitations." Rebecca stood at attention, her jaw clenched, as Harrison continued his verbal assault. She could feel the eyes of her fellow soldiers on her, some sympathetic, others uncertain. The humiliation burned, but she refused to let him see her break. She had learned early in her military career that showing weakness in front of Harrison would only invite more abuse. Despite the public humiliation, Rebecca completed the mission flawlessly. Her team successfully gathered the required intelligence and returned without incident. When she submitted her report, Harrison barely glanced at it before dismissing her with a wave of his hand. There was no acknowledgement of her success, no recognition of her leadership capabilities. This pattern continued for months. Harrison would undermine her authority, question her decisions, and consistently pass her over for promotions and advanced training opportunities. He seemed to take particular pleasure in making her feel small and insignificant, often making comments about her physical stature and suggesting she was only taking up space that could be better utilized by a real soldier. Rebecca's fellow soldiers began to notice the pattern of harassment. Some offered quiet support, while others remained silent, afraid of becoming Harrison's next target. The toxic environment was affecting not just Rebecca, but the entire unit's morale and effectiveness. Through it all, Rebecca maintained her professionalism and continued to excel in her duties. She documented every interaction with Harrison, keeping detailed records of his harassment and discriminatory behavior. She knew that one day, her patience and persistence would pay off. During one particularly difficult week, Harrison assigned Rebecca to inventory duty in the base warehouse, a job typically reserved for soldiers facing disciplinary action. While her peers participated in crucial tactical training exercises, she spent 12-hour days counting supplies and organizing equipment. The assignment was clearly punitive, designed to humiliate her and demonstrate her supposed worthlessness to the unit. Rebecca approached the task with her characteristic determination, turning the mundane assignment into an opportunity to identify systemic inefficiencies in the base's supply chain. She discovered significant discrepancies in inventory records and developed a comprehensive reorganization plan that could save the military thousands of dollars annually. When she presented her findings to the quartermaster, he was impressed by her thoroughness and analytical skills. However, when the quartermaster mentioned Rebecca's excellent work to Harrison, the colonel's response was predictably dismissive. "Martinez is good at counting beans," he said with a sneer. "Maybe we should transfer her to accounting where she belongs." The comment stung, but Rebecca filed it away with all the others, adding it to her growing documentation of Harrison's discriminatory behavior. As months turned into years, Rebecca's reputation among her peers continued to grow despite Harrison's attempts to undermine her. She became known as someone who could be relied upon to complete any task with precision and dedication. Her subordinates respected her fair leadership style and her willingness to stand up for them when necessary. Even some of Harrison's closest allies began to question his treatment of the capable young officer. The breaking point came during a joint training exercise with Allied forces. Rebecca had been assigned to serve as a liaison, coordinating communications between different units. It was a complex role that required diplomatic skills, technical expertise, and the ability to think quickly under pressure. Despite Harrison's clear intention to set her up for failure by giving her inadequate resources and conflicting instructions, Rebecca managed to excel in the position. Her performance during the exercise earned praise from visiting officials and Allied commanders. A British colonel specifically commended her professionalism and competence, noting that she had prevented several potentially serious miscommunications that could have compromised the entire operation. When word of the praise reached Harrison, his anger was palpable. "Don't let it go to your head, Martinez," he warned her privately after the exercise concluded. "One good day doesn't make you a real soldier. You're still the same weak link you've always been." His words were cruel, but Rebecca noticed something different in his tone. For the first time, she detected a hint of uncertainty, as if he was beginning to realize that his assessment of her abilities might be flawed. That evening, Rebecca received an unexpected message that would change everything. A representative from the Pentagon had been observing the joint exercise and had been impressed by her performance. She was being recommended for an accelerated promotion program designed to fast-track exceptional officers into leadership positions. The news was both thrilling and terrifying, as she knew it would likely infuriate Harrison even further. The accelerated promotion program was highly competitive, accepting only a handful of officers each year. Rebecca would need to complete additional training, pass rigorous examinations, and demonstrate exceptional leadership capabilities. The program promised rapid advancement through the ranks, potentially allowing her to reach colonel level within a few years rather than the typical decades-long process. When Rebecca requested permission to apply for the program, Harrison's reaction was explosive. He accused her of being overly ambitious and suggested that she was trying to advance beyond her capabilities. "You think you're ready for real responsibility?" he demanded during their meeting. "You can barely handle the basic duties of a lieutenant. This program is for serious officers, not someone playing soldier." Despite his objections, Harrison couldn't formally block her application without providing legitimate reasons, which he lacked. Rebecca's service record was exemplary, her performance evaluations consistently high, and her recommendations from other officers glowing. Reluctantly, he signed the necessary paperwork, but not without making his displeasure clear. The application process was grueling. Rebecca spent months preparing, studying advanced military strategy, leadership principles, and international relations. She worked 18-hour days, balancing her regular duties with intensive preparation for the program's entrance examinations. Harrison seemed to take perverse pleasure in assigning her additional responsibilities during this period, clearly hoping to sabotage her chances of success. When the acceptance letter arrived, Rebecca could hardly believe it. She had been selected for the Accelerated Promotion Program and would begin training at the Pentagon within the month. The news spread quickly through the base, with most of her colleagues offering congratulations and support. Harrison's response was notably absent from the well-wishers. The Pentagon training was unlike anything Rebecca had experienced. She was surrounded by the military's brightest minds, officers who had been selected for their exceptional potential and leadership capabilities. The coursework was intensive, covering everything from advanced tactical planning to international diplomacy. Rebecca threw herself into the program with characteristic determination, earning top marks in every subject. One of the most valuable aspects of the program was the mentorship component. Rebecca was paired with General Patricia Williams, a decorated officer who had faced similar challenges as a woman in a male-dominated field. General Williams became not just a mentor but a role model, demonstrating that it was possible to succeed despite systemic barriers and discrimination. During one of their regular meetings, General Williams reviewed Rebecca's service record and the documentation she had kept regarding Harrison's harassment. The general's expression grew increasingly serious as she read through the detailed accounts of discriminatory behavior and professional sabotage. "This is completely unacceptable," she said firmly. "No officer should have to endure this kind of treatment." General Williams assured Rebecca that her experiences would be taken seriously and that appropriate action would be taken. However, she also advised patience, suggesting that sometimes the most effective justice comes from professional success rather than formal complaints. "The best revenge against people like Harrison," she said with a knowing smile, "is to prove them wrong through your achievements." As Rebecca progressed through the program, she began to understand what General Williams meant. She was developing skills and knowledge that would make her a formidable officer, regardless of Harrison's attempts to undermine her confidence. The program's final phase involved a comprehensive leadership assessment where candidates were evaluated on their ability to command respect, make difficult decisions, and inspire others. Rebecca excelled in every category, earning praise from her instructors and peers alike. Her natural leadership abilities, combined with years of adversity that had strengthened her resilience, made her an standout candidate. Upon completion of the program, Rebecca was promoted to major, skipping the rank of captain entirely. The ceremony was held at the Pentagon, attended by high-ranking officials and her fellow program graduates. General Williams personally pinned the new insignia on Rebecca's uniform, a moment that brought tears to her eyes as she thought about how far she had come. The promotion came with a new assignment. Rebecca would be returning to active duty as a strategic planning officer, responsible for coordinating complex military operations across multiple units. The position required exceptional organizational skills, diplomatic finesse, and the ability to work effectively with officers of all ranks. It was exactly the kind of role that would showcase her capabilities and continue her rapid advancement. What Rebecca didn't know was that her new assignment would eventually bring her back into contact with Colonel Harrison. The military's restructuring plans included consolidating several bases under unified command structures, and Harrison's unit was slated to be incorporated into a larger strategic framework. The irony of the situation was not lost on the Pentagon officials who had been following Rebecca's career with interest. Meanwhile, Harrison's own career had stagnated. His outdated leadership style and documented issues with personnel management had caught the attention of his superiors. Several formal complaints had been filed against him over the years, not just from Rebecca, but from other soldiers who had experienced his discriminatory behavior. The military's increasing focus on diversity and inclusion had made officers like Harrison liabilities rather than assets. During Rebecca's time at the Pentagon, she had learned that Harrison was being investigated for his treatment of subordinates. The investigation was thorough and professional, examining patterns of behavior rather than isolated incidents. Rebecca's meticulous documentation proved invaluable to the inquiry, providing concrete evidence of systematic harassment and discrimination. The investigation's findings were damning. Harrison had consistently failed to provide equal opportunities for advancement, had created hostile work environments for female soldiers, and had demonstrated a pattern of unprofessional behavior that undermined unit cohesion. While the investigation proceeded, Harrison remained in command, unaware that his career was about to take a dramatic turn for the worse. Rebecca's success in her new role was immediate and impressive. She streamlined communication protocols, improved inter-unit coordination, and developed innovative strategies that caught the attention of senior leadership. Her reputation as a brilliant strategist and effective leader spread throughout the military hierarchy, earning her recognition from generals and admirals who had previously never heard her name. Within 18 months of her promotion to major, Rebecca received another unexpected opportunity. The Pentagon was restructuring its strategic command framework, creating new leadership positions for officers who had demonstrated exceptional capabilities. Rebecca was selected for promotion to lieutenant colonel, a rank that typically required 15 to 20 years of service. She would be achieving it in just 5 years, a testament to her extraordinary abilities and dedication. The promotion ceremony was even more elaborate than the previous one, reflecting the significance of her achievement. Rebecca's parents attended, bursting with pride as they watched their daughter receive recognition for her years of hard work and perseverance. As Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, Rebecca's new assignment would be overseeing the integration of multiple military units into a new strategic command structure. The position required her to work with base commanders, coordinate resources, and ensure smooth transitions during organizational changes. It was a role that would test every skill she had developed and provide opportunities to demonstrate her leadership capabilities on a larger scale. The integration project was massive in scope, involving dozens of bases and thousands of personnel. Rebecca approached it with her characteristic thoroughness, developing comprehensive plans that addressed everything from logistical challenges to personnel transitions. Her attention to detail and ability to anticipate problems before they occurred impressed her superiors and earned the respect of the base commanders she worked with. One of the bases included in the integration was Harrison's facility. When Rebecca first saw his name on the list of commanders she would be working with, she felt a mixture of emotions. There was certainly satisfaction in knowing that she would be in a position of authority over the man who had tried so hard to destroy her career. However, there was also apprehension about how the interaction would unfold. Rebecca decided to handle the situation with complete professionalism. She would judge Harrison based on his performance and cooperation with the integration process, not on their past history. This approach reflected the kind of leader she had become, someone who could separate personal feelings from professional responsibilities. The first video conference with all the base commanders was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Rebecca had prepared extensively, reviewing each facility's capabilities, personnel strengths, and logistical requirements. She was ready to lead the discussion about how the integration would proceed and what expectations would be placed on each commander. As the conference began, Rebecca noticed Harrison's surprised expression when he realized who would be leading the meeting. His face went through several emotions, from shock to disbelief to what appeared to be anger. However, He remained silent as Rebecca introduced herself and began outlining the integration plan. Throughout the presentation, Rebecca maintained her professional demeanor, addressing each commander by rank and treating them all with equal respect. She answered questions thoughtfully, provided detailed explanations when requested, and demonstrated the kind of leadership that had earned her rapid promotions. Harrison sat quietly, his expression unreadable, contributing nothing to the discussion. After the conference ended, Rebecca received individual calls from several commanders expressing their enthusiasm for the integration plan and their confidence in her leadership. Harrison was not among those who called, but she hadn't expected him to be. She knew that their first direct interaction would be awkward, given their history, but she was prepared to handle it professionally. The integration process would take several months to complete, during which Rebecca would need to visit each base personally to oversee the transition. Harrison's facility was scheduled for the middle of the process, giving both of them time to adjust to their new professional relationship. Rebecca used this time to focus on the successful integrations at other bases, building momentum and credibility for the project. As word of the integration's success spread throughout the military, Rebecca's reputation continued to grow. She was being mentioned in Pentagon briefings as an example of effective leadership and innovative strategic thinking. The contrast between her rising star and Harrison's stagnant career was becoming increasingly apparent to everyone involved in the integration process. The investigation into Harrison's conduct was also progressing, though Rebecca was not directly involved in the process. She had provided her documentation when requested, but had left the matter in the hands of the appropriate authorities. Her focus remained on her current responsibilities and professional growth. When the time came for Rebecca to visit Harrison's base, she arrived with a small team of specialists to assess the integration requirements. The base was exactly as she remembered it, but her perspective had changed dramatically. She was no longer the young lieutenant trying to prove herself. She was now a seasoned officer with the authority and confidence that came with her rank and achievements. Harrison met her at the base entrance, his posture rigid and his expression carefully neutral. The years had not been kind to him. His hair was grayer, his face more lined, and there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. When he saluted her, Rebecca could see the effort it took for him to acknowledge her superior rank. "Lieutenant Colonel Martinez," he said formally, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "Welcome to the base. We're prepared to cooperate fully with the integration process." Rebecca returned his salute and responded with equal formality. "Thank you, Colonel Harrison. I appreciate your cooperation. I'm looking forward to working with you and your team to ensure a smooth transition." The words were professional and appropriate, but both of them understood the deeper significance of the moment. The young woman Harrison had tried to crush was now his superior officer, holding his career in her hands. The irony was not lost on either of them, though neither acknowledged it directly. During the initial base tour, Rebecca was impressed by the facility's capabilities, but noted several areas where improvements were needed. The base's record-keeping was disorganized. Communication protocols were outdated, and there were clear inefficiencies in resource allocation. These were exactly the kind of issues that the integration process was designed to address. As they walked through the base, Rebecca noticed how the other soldiers reacted to her presence. Many recognized her from her previous assignment and seemed genuinely pleased to see her success. Their respect and admiration were evident, creating a stark contrast to Harrison's obvious discomfort with the situation. During the formal briefing, Rebecca outlined the integration requirements and timelines. She explained how the base would be incorporated into the new strategic framework and what changes would be necessary to meet the new standards. Harrison listened attentively, occasionally asking questions about specific requirements or procedures. Rebecca's presentation was comprehensive and well-organized, demonstrating her mastery of the subject matter and her ability to communicate complex information clearly. She handled questions from Harrison and his staff with confidence and expertise, providing detailed explanations when necessary and acknowledging when she would need to research certain topics further. As the briefing concluded, Rebecca announced that she would be conducting individual meetings with key personnel to assess their readiness for the integration. This was standard procedure, but she noticed Harrison's expression tighten slightly when she mentioned that she would be interviewing him as well. The individual meetings provided Rebecca with valuable insights into the base's operations and personnel. She spoke with officers and enlisted soldiers alike, gathering information about morale, training needs, and operational challenges. The conversations revealed a picture of a base that was functioning adequately, but was far from reaching its full potential. When it came time for Harrison's interview, Rebecca chose to conduct it in the base commander's office, a space that held many unpleasant memories for her. She sat behind the desk where Harrison had once berated her, a position that symbolized how completely their roles had reversed. Harrison entered the office and stood at attention until she invited him to sit. "Colonel Harrison," Rebecca began, consulting her notes, "I'd like to discuss your assessment of the base's readiness for integration and your thoughts on the challenges we might face during the transition." Harrison's responses were professional, but lacked the enthusiasm and confidence that Rebecca had observed in other commanders. He seemed to be going through the motions, providing the expected answers without displaying genuine engagement with the process. As the interview progressed, Rebecca noticed that Harrison appeared uncomfortable and somewhat defensive. When she asked about his leadership philosophy and approach to personnel management, his answers were generic and rehearsed. It was clear that he was being cautious, perhaps aware that his past behavior was under scrutiny. "Colonel Harrison," Rebecca said, setting down her pen and looking directly at him, "I want to ensure that this integration is successful for everyone involved. Is there anything specific you'd like to discuss about the process or any concerns you have about the changes ahead?" Harrison shifted in his chair, his discomfort evident. "No, ma'am. I'm committed to following all directives and ensuring full compliance with the integration requirements." Rebecca nodded, recognizing that he was not going to engage in any meaningful discussion about their past or his concerns about the future. She concluded the interview professionally, thanking him for his time and cooperation. After completing her assessment of the base, Rebecca prepared her report for Pentagon leadership. She documented the facility's strengths and weaknesses objectively, recommending specific improvements and timelines for implementation. Her assessment of Harrison's leadership was factual and professional, noting areas where performance could be enhanced without making personal attacks or referencing their past conflicts. The report was well received by her superiors, who praised her thoroughness and professionalism. They were particularly impressed by her ability to maintain objectivity despite the personal history with Harrison. This demonstration of mature leadership further enhanced her reputation within the military hierarchy. Over the following weeks, Rebecca worked closely with Harrison's team to implement the integration changes. She provided guidance and support, helping them adapt to new procedures and standards. Throughout this process, she maintained her professional demeanor, treating Harrison with the same respect she showed all other commanders. However, the stress of the situation was clearly affecting Harrison. His subordinates reported that he had become increasingly irritable and micromanaging in his approach to daily operations. The pressure of having his former victim now serving as his superior was taking its toll on his leadership effectiveness. During one of their regular update meetings, Rebecca noticed that Harrison seemed particularly agitated. When she asked about the progress on certain integration requirements, his responses were curt and bordered on insubordinate. She addressed this immediately, reminding him of the importance of professional communication and cooperative attitudes during the transition period. "Colonel Harrison," she said firmly, "I need to ensure that we maintain professional standards throughout this process. If you're experiencing difficulties with any aspect of the integration, I'm here to provide support and guidance. However, I also need your full cooperation and commitment to making this transition successful." Harrison's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Rebecca thought he might explode with the same anger she had witnessed years earlier. However, he seemed to catch himself, taking a deep breath before responding with forced politeness. "Yes, ma'am. I apologize if my communication has been unclear. I'm committed to the success of this integration." Rebecca accepted his apology, but made a note to monitor his behavior more closely. She understood that the situation was difficult for him, but she could not allow personal discomfort to interfere with the mission's success. As the integration process continued, Rebecca received regular updates from her team about the progress at various bases. Harrison's facility was lagging behind others in several key areas, despite having adequate resources and personnel. The delays appeared to be related to implementation issues rather than fundamental problems with the integration plan. Rebecca decided to extend her stay at the base to provide additional oversight and support. This decision was based purely on operational needs, but she knew that Harrison would likely interpret it as a lack of confidence in his leadership capabilities. The extended stay allowed Rebecca to work more closely with Harrison's staff and gain a better understanding of the implementation challenges. She discovered that many of the delays were due to unclear communication from Harrison to his subordinates. His instructions were often contradictory or incomplete, leading to confusion and inefficiency. Rebecca addressed this issue by implementing regular coordination meetings where she could clarify requirements and ensure everyone understood their responsibilities. She also provided additional training for key personnel, helping them develop the skills needed to succeed in the new operational framework. During one of these training sessions, Rebecca noticed that Harrison was absent despite being scheduled to attend. When she inquired about his whereabouts, his aide explained that he was dealing with an urgent administrative matter. Rebecca made a note to follow up on this, as it seemed to be part of a pattern of avoidance. Later that day, Rebecca received an unexpected visitor, General Williams, her former mentor from the Pentagon. The general was conducting a tour of bases involved in the integration process and had specifically requested to visit Harrison's facility. Rebecca was pleased to see her mentor and looked forward to discussing the integration's progress. "Lieutenant Colonel Martinez," General Williams said with a warm smile, "I've been following your work on this integration project. The reports I've been receiving are extremely positive. You've exceeded all expectations." Rebecca felt a surge of pride at the general's praise. "Thank you, General. It's been a challenging but rewarding project. The cooperation from most base commanders has been exceptional." General Williams raised an eyebrow at Rebecca's careful phrasing. "Most commanders. Are you experiencing difficulties with any particular facility?" Rebecca hesitated before responding. She wanted to be honest about the challenges without appearing to complain or make personal attacks. There have been some implementation delays at this base, but we're working through them. I believe we'll be able to meet the overall timeline. The general nodded thoughtfully. I'd like to meet with Colonel Harrison while I'm here. I'm interested in his perspective on the integration process. Rebecca arranged the meeting between General Williams and Harrison, though she noticed that Harrison seemed nervous about the encounter. During the meeting, the general asked probing questions about the base's progress and Harrison's approach to leadership during the transition period. Harrison's responses were defensive and somewhat evasive, which clearly caught General Williams' attention. When the general asked about specific integration milestones, Harrison provided vague answers that suggested he was not fully engaged with the process. After the meeting, General Williams requested a private conversation with Rebecca. They walked to a quiet area of the base where they could speak freely. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, the general began, I want you to know that your handling of this situation has been exemplary. I'm aware of the history between you and Colonel Harrison, and I'm impressed by your professionalism and objectivity. Rebecca felt a mix of gratitude and apprehension. Thank you, General. I've tried to focus on the mission rather than personal considerations. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need, General Williams replied. However, I want you to know that changes are coming. The investigation into Colonel Harrison's conduct is nearing completion, and the findings are significant. His career will be taking a different direction soon. Rebecca nodded, understanding the implications. I see. Should I expect changes in the command structure here? Yes, General Williams confirmed. In fact, I'm here to discuss your next assignment. Your success with this integration project has caught the attention of senior leadership. We're considering you for promotion to full colonel and assignment to a strategic command position. The news was overwhelming. Rebecca had hoped for continued advancement, but the pace of her promotion was exceeding even her most optimistic expectations. General, I'm honored by the consideration. What would this assignment entail? You would be taking command of a newly formed Strategic Operations Center, responsible for coordinating multi-base operations across an entire region. It's a significant responsibility, but your performance demonstrates that you're ready for it. Rebecca felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. The opportunity was everything she had worked toward, but it also represented a major leap in responsibility and visibility.